Hello, Matthew Williams here. Just bringing you a quick video to talk about the announcement that the government is going to invest in small businesses by allowing loans to take place, which will be underwritten by the government in the form of bonds. And it sounds quite good at first, doesn't it? That the government is going to inject 1 billion, which, to be honest, is like water off a duck's back if you're talking about what really needs to be invested in the country in order to solve problems and start up new businesses. But 1 billion, you see, because this is just to sort of tantalize people, because 1 billion is kind of like, okay, we can manage 1 billion, can't we, for small businesses? We'll just inject 1 billion. Sounds great. But then, and they say, and because the banks won't loan this money, the banks won't loan this money to small businesses because they consider them a risk. Okay? Bear that in mind. Banks consider these small businesses to be a risk, so the banks won't loan the money to them. Okay. The reason they consider them a risk is because small businesses often go under and they can't pay their debts, so they're written off. And that means that the bank then would be liable for the money that is lost. So, because small businesses can't get their loans, small businesses can't start up. So the government has said, well, I tell you what then, we'll lend you the money. Now that wouldn't be so bad, because if the government actually lent the money, then the government would get the money paid back. Okay? So the government lends out 1 billion. It maybe only gets half of it back. It gets $500 million back because $500 million of it gets lost. That's okay, because just $500 million is lost. So that would be an interesting principle, but that's not how they said they're going to do it. Gets more interesting. The government have said what they're going to do is make sure that £1 billion of money is loaned, that the banks will loan it, so the banks are actually loaning it, not the government, but the government are going to back it. And they're not just going to back it so that if the money doesn't come back, that the government will just pay the banks the money that didn't come back. The government, in its fucking wisdom, and let's face it, they ain't stupid, so there's a fucking reason why they've done this, and it's this: they've offered bonds. So they said to the banks that they're offering bonds. So basically, the banks can buy the bonds, which then gives the banks the money to do the loaning. So the government has already basically supplied the money for the loans. Okay? And then bonds. What do bonds mean? Bonds mean a guarantee from a government to pay a certain amount of money, whether or not interest or the country is in debt, or whether or not interest rates have gone up, or whether inflation has gone up, so money is now less valuable. Right? So if I was to buy a bond today, a government bond, I bought a £100 bond, and the bond says on it that in 5 years' time, they will offer to pay me 150 quid for buying the bond. Okay? Now, even if the government lose all their money and we are basically in the shithole, right? And now £100 is now worth £50, okay? So you'd have to have, twice as much money. So £100, I'd have to have £200 in order to have the £100 back. That's how much money that I would actually have to have, because it would be worth half the amount in, say, 5 years' time. That was if things collapsed, yes? But the government, because it's a bond, would offer to keep in line with inflation. So the government wouldn't just give me the 150 they originally promised. They would give me, in line with inflation, now the equivalent of £300. So they would keep it in line with inflation. Okay? So who picks up the money for that? Who picks up the money for these bonds that guarantee rich people money back? Yeah? Guarantee really rich fuckers who have banks, who have a little bank in their back pocket because they're rich bankers, right? or people from foreign governments. Foreign governments could buy these bonds because they're guaranteed returns. They're not risky investments. They're not loans, which the bank could call back. The bank could say, we've given you this money as a loan, but now we have to have it back. You see, and they could call it back. A bond is a word of bond that you will give that money back with the inflation interest on top, so that the person is under no risk. So guess what? The government has said that it's going to give $1 billion worth of bonds. How much are the banks or the people who buy the bonds going to be promised to be paid back? 2 billion? 1.5 billion? 2 billion? And if in 3 or 4 years' time, when this scheme has gone tits up and the government are really desperate for even more money and inflation has gone really high, they might have to give 3 or 4 billion back for the 1 billion that was supposed to be loaned out in the first place. So who benefits? The rich people who bought the bonds in order to bail out the small businesses for 1 billion, when the government could have just given the billion to the business people in the first place, directly to them. Here is your money. Please pay us back. Yes, from the government, directly to. No, you can't do that. You can't do that, say the government. We've got to get the banks involved. We've got to give the banks the chance to make money out of us, the government, which is meaning that it's going to be coming out of the taxpayer's pocket. So basically, fleecing the fucking taxpayer in order for a magical project which is going to fucking solve all the problems of these small businesses. If you can't see the fucking flaw in that little situation and the way it's just siphoning money straight out of the fucking tax pockets of the fucking public, straight into the bankers' fucking back pockets. If you can't fucking see that, shoot yourself in the head now, because that's what's planned and is going through the books right now. Anyone who tells me, right, anyone who ever fucking tells me that I'm a skiving little fucking cunt, right, anybody who ever tells me I'm a skiving little cunt can just watch this fucking video for a little fucking instructional on why their tax money goes flush, straight down the drain, straight back into the private hands of private individuals and bankers. That's where your fucking money goes. So fucking stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Fuck's sake, what is this? This government is just trying to take every last fucking penny out of the fucking tax coffers because they're trying to destroy this country. They're part of the fucking New World Order. They're part of the fucking Illuminati. We all know it. It's like the Fed. The Bank of England is private. It's not a real fucking national bank. It's not a national bank. It's a private bank. The major stockholder is the Queen. Yes? And it's the other major stockholder is the fucking Rothschilds. Yeah? You can't buy shares in it. You can't buy fucking shares in the bank because the bank is private and it doesn't go on the stock exchange. So you can't buy shares in the only fucking bank that can print the money of the United Kingdom, which then gets given back to the public on loan, loaned back to the public for interest, otherwise known as inflation. Yes? And that's why inflation keeps on going up and value of money keeps going down, and it costs more and more and more money to buy a packet of crisps every year and to buy a loaf of bread every year, because inflation is going up. Money devalues because of paying the interest back to the Bank of England for loaning us the money to go into circulation, and it's exactly the same in the United States with the Fed. You see, gold doesn't devalue because gold and the gold standard, yeah, you could buy a loaf of bread today and you could have like 1,000 loaves of bread for a gold bar, let's say, yeah, and in 25 years' time, you could still have 1,000 loaves of bread for a gold fucking bar, because the price to pay with cash of gold will have gone up. So gold today might cost $2,000 for a bar. In 10 years' time, it might cost $20,000 to buy a bar. So you can still buy 1,000 loaves of bread with today's gold price as you will in 20 years' time, because gold doesn't change, the value doesn't change. The only thing that changes is cash, because cash is devalued. So that anyone that has a loan today, right, for 10 years, their loan is almost fucking doubled in what you're having to pay back, because it's halved the value of the money. Yeah? Are making sense to anybody yet? And it's exactly the same in the fucking United States with the Fed, because the Fed is a privately owned fucking bank, right, that is not part of the government, and they print money when they haven't got any gold to back it, just like the Bank of England. They don't have gold. They don't have gold in the vaults, yeah? They don't have it. They've given most of the gold to China, because China is actually buying up all the world's gold, because it's actually got an economy, you know, where people are making goods and selling them around the world, you know, that sort of thing, which seems to be what they don't want to have happen in the United States and the UK, with everything getting sent over to China, you know. That's why China bought out all the gold. And that's why China's buying out all our debt bonds, because it knows that by buying the debt bonds, that in 5 years' time, no matter what inflation is, they'll get the high value. The debt bonds might as well be gold, because they're index linked to go with the inflation, the value of inflation, so that they don't devalue. They're buying bonds, they're buying gold. Gold is as good as a bond, yeah? And we're fucking selling them fucking bonds. We're selling them our country. We're selling everything around us to China. Unfucking believable. So there we go. There's my rant. Think about it. And if you want to understand a little bit more about it, watch a video that I'm going to put in the link below, because this fucking video should wise you fuckers up. Sorry. My humble YouTube viewers, I mean. I'm sure some of you know this stuff, but I'm sure a lot of you don't. Take the time out to watch this video. It's 2 hours long, and rewind it until you get what it's trying to say. Keep rewinding it and rewinding it, because your brain will not engage and will go, this can't be the way it is. This isn't how the banking system works. They can't be doing this. This is crazy. Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Well, it's because what it's about is taking all of your money and giving it to the bankers. Yes, that's what it's really about. It's not about countries, and it's not about prosperity, and it's not about fucking jobs for the boys. It's about your money going to them, right? That's what it's about. It's about destroying governments in countries that have had strength in the past, because they are going to try and fucking bring a new world order in. And it's going to have a lot to do with a fucking red flag. A red flag with a fucking yellow circle in the middle. Yeah? That's what it's going to be when it happens. So just be prepared, or get fucking political. And get people like Ron Paul in, who promises to bring, like, you know, the what is it fucking called? Your thing you've got that we don't fucking have. Not Declaration of Independence, your Constitution, your fucking American Constitution that you have, yeah? It's to bring that back into power, so that these fucking banking pricks are kicked out. Because, you know, the Rothschilds run the Fed, yeah? The Rothschilds and the European and British banks, yeah, run the Federal Reserve. So they're siphoning all the lifeblood out of America just to pay the interest on the fucking money that's being printed that doesn't have any gold to back it. This is what's known as inflation, folks. That's why we have inflation. No gold, but let's print money anyway. Oh, but now it's devalued because our gold is no longer valuing the same amount of the money, because the money is fucking fake. We're just printing it with nothing to back it. So therefore it devalues. This is known as inflation. When something devalues, it inflates the price. Inflation. Understand it now? Because a lot of people don't seem to get this very simple principle. And why are we being fucked? So anyway, and radiation spreading all over us from fucking Fukushima, which is still going in Japan, and nobody seems to be talking about. So, have a nice day.